I used to believe love could survive anything. That no matter how dark things got, the person you chose would always protect you, not hurt you. But that belief shattered the night she handed me a check for $12 million, on the condition that I leave her, for good. At first, it sounded like freedom. An escape from all the pain. But then she smiled, calmly, like I was some kind of game. She told me not to rush my decision, to stay one more night. Just one. And now, as I sit across from her in the same house where love once lived, I feel the walls close in. Because tonight, she's showing me exactly why I'll never be able to leave. Not for money, not for anything. We met in the quiet corner of a bookstore. I was browsing through a worn copy of a poetry collection when she asked if I liked Sylvia Plath. Her voice was soft, her eyes sharp, and I remember thinking she was someone who noticed everything. That's what pulled me in at first, the way she made me feel seen. She said her name was Lana, and it rolled off her tongue like a secret meant only for me. We talked for an hour without realizing the sun had set outside. That night, she walked me home, and it felt like the beginning of something rare. The first few months with her were a dream. She brought me flowers on random Tuesdays. Wrote me notes that she hid in the pockets of my jackets. She memorized my coffee order before I even realized I had one. Every moment with her felt deliberate, like she was building a world for the two of us where no one else existed. I was in awe. I told my friends she was intense, but in a good way. They smiled and said I looked happy. I believed I was. But there were signs. Small ones at first. The time she got quiet when I mentioned an old friend texting me. Or the way she insisted I delete certain people from my social media. They don't support us, she'd say. I thought it was just her way of protecting what we had. She called it loyalty. I didn't argue. Eventually, she wanted to know where I was all the time. She said it was just because she missed me. She would text me every hour, sometimes more. If I didn't reply fast enough, she'd call and ask if everything was okay. Then she'd sound hurt. You didn't think to just let me know you were busy. She'd whisper. Her voice would tremble just enough to make me feel like I'd done something wrong. Still, I stayed. I told myself that every relationship had rough patches. That passion came with intensity. She told me she loved me at least 10 times a day. She cooked for me, bought me gifts I never asked for, planned our future down to the tiles in our future kitchen. And part of me loved being wanted that much. Loved feeling necessary, important. But there was something deeper under her love, something I couldn't name then. One night, she told me she had a dream I left her, and she woke up crying. She said if I ever did that in real life, she wouldn't survive it. She said I was everything to her, and without me, there was nothing worth living for. I held her until she stopped shaking, promising things I wasn't sure I believed anymore. My friends started to drift away. One of them, Tasha, asked if I was okay. She said I didn't seem like myself. I told her she didn't understand Lana. That Lana just loved differently. But when Tasha stopped calling after that, I felt something close to relief. Less pressure. Less explaining. It was easier to let go than to defend a relationship I wasn't even sure I understood anymore. The worst part was, I missed her even when we were apart for a few hours. Lana had a way of making me feel like I belonged nowhere else. She filled every space, every silence. And when she wasn't there, it was like the world dimmed. I didn't see it then, but that wasn't love. That was dependence. A version of love that clings in cages, that confuses devotion with possession. And yet, every time she looked at me with those soft eyes, every time she whispered that I was her whole world, I forgot the bad parts. I forgot the loneliness I felt even when I was with her. I told myself it would get better. That she just needed time to feel safe. That love could fix everything if I just held on a little longer. It wasn't long before the little rules turned into routines I couldn't escape. Lana would call them boundaries, but they only ever seemed to apply to me. If I went out, she wanted pictures, who I was with, what I was wearing, even the street signs to prove where I was. She said it wasn't about control, just reassurance. That the world made her anxious, and she needed to know I was safe. At first, I gave in because I wanted to ease her mind. But her anxiety started to feel like a leash around my neck. I stopped making plans without her. She'd say things like, "Why would you want to go without me?" Or, "If you really loved me, you wouldn't need anyone else." And I started to believe that. I started to believe that needing space was selfish. That maybe I was the one who didn't understand love properly. She had this way of twisting my words until I ended up apologizing for things I didn't even do. The nights were the hardest. She'd stay awake long after I fell asleep, scrolling through my phone while I lay there pretending not to notice. I once asked her about it, gently, and she got so quiet it scared me. Then she cried, said she just wanted to make sure I wasn't hiding anything. That her last girlfriend cheated, and she couldn't go through that again. I held her while she sobbed, even though I felt like the one being violated. She didn't like me working late. One time, I had to stay behind at work for a meeting. She called 10 times in an hour. When I finally answered, she was screaming. Accused me of lying, said I made her feel abandoned. I left work in a rush, heart pounding, only to get home and find her curled up on the couch watching TV, calm as anything. She smiled and said, "See, I just needed to know you'd come back to me." It was like walking through a maze with invisible walls. I never knew what would upset her next. A missed call, a delay in texting back, laughing at a joke someone else made. One time, I complimented a waitress for her service, and Lana went silent for hours. Later that night, she said I embarrassed her. Said I acted like she didn't exist. I ended up writing a 2-page apology just to make the silence stop. There were good moments, of course. Moments that made me question if I was overreacting. She'd make me breakfast in bed. Surprise me with weekend getaways. Tell me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. She had a way of making those moments feel so magical that everything else faded. I clung to those days like they were proof that the other version of her didn't really exist. But deep down, something didn't feel right. I started waking up with a pit in my stomach, unsure what version of her I'd get that day. Would she be soft and sweet? Or cold and accusing? My body was always tense, waiting for the next shift in mood. I started hiding things, not because I was doing anything wrong, but because I was afraid of how she'd interpret them. A message from my cousin. A smile at a coworker. Anything could become a fight. My world shrank until it was just her. I didn't even notice it happening at first. But one day, I realized I hadn't spoken to my mother in over a month. My phone barely buzzed. My social media was a ghost town. She had slowly erased every connection I had, and I had let her. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped believing I deserved more. Still, I told myself this was love. That all relationships had storms. That she just loved me more deeply than most people could handle. She said I made her feel safe, and I wanted to believe I was strong enough to carry that weight. But the truth was, I was drowning, and she kept calling it devotion. It all started unraveling the day I forgot to call her during my lunch break. I was buried in work, genuinely overwhelmed, but when I finally checked my phone, there were 12 missed calls and a string of messages that went from worried to furious in minutes. I called her back, tried to explain, but she didn't want explanations. She wanted proof that she was still the center of my world. She hung up before I could finish my sentence. That night, she didn't speak to me. She made dinner, placed the plate in front of me, and ate in silence, never looking up. It was like being in a house with a ticking bomb. One wrong move and everything would explode. After dinner, I tried to talk to her, to apologize, to reassure her. That's when it happened. She stood in front of me, tears streaming down her face, and said, "Do you even want to be here anymore?" Her voice broke in a way that made me feel like a villain. I told her of course I did. That I loved her. That I was just tired. But she shook her head slowly, like she didn't believe a word. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I'll give you $12 million to walk away right now." I laughed at first, thinking it was some dramatic, sarcastic joke. But her face didn't move. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a checkbook. I stared at her, frozen. She sat down calmly, wrote the numbers with a steady hand, and slid the check across the table like it was a normal Tuesday night. "Take it," she said. "Go. If I'm really that much of a burden to you, then leave." I couldn't breathe. I didn't even look at the check. I just stared at her, unsure whether to scream or cry or run. The silence between us stretched thin like glass. I asked her why she would even say something like that. She didn't answer. She just sat there, eyes locked on mine, waiting, daring me to pick it up. Like this was some test. Like the money was bait, and my reaction was the real game. She finally broke the silence. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" she whispered. "I can see it in your eyes." I shook my head, but her voice got louder, sharper. "You want out. You've been wanting out for a long time. Just take it. Take the money and leave me like everyone else." My throat tightened. I told her I didn't want the money. That I wanted us to work things out. But I could see something shift in her eyes. Not sadness. Not pain. Something colder. A sort of twisted satisfaction, like she had proven something. Like she had forced the truth out of me even when it wasn't there. That night, she climbed into bed beside me without another word. She curled up against me like nothing had happened. I lay stiff and awake, heart pounding, the image of that check burned into my memory. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, calm and unreadable, offering to pay me to disappear. The next morning, she acted like it never happened. Made coffee, kissed my forehead, told me to have a good day. I went to work feeling like I was losing my mind. I wanted to talk to someone, but who? I had no one left. She'd isolated me so thoroughly that even reaching out felt like betrayal. I told myself she was just emotional. That she didn't mean it. But deep down, I knew better. She wasn't offering me money because she wanted me gone. She was testing me, seeing how much control she still had. And I had failed. Not because I took the money, but because I didn't leave when I should have. Because I stayed, even when she made it so clear that staying meant surrendering myself completely. Something changed after that night. The way she looked at me. The way she touched me. Like I was hers, permanently, and she didn't have to hide her claws anymore. I wasn't her partner. I was her possession. And she wanted me to remember that. Every single day. The offer never disappeared. She didn't bring it up directly again, but it hung in the air between us like a storm waiting to break. I caught her watching me sometimes, eyes narrowed, like she was measuring the weight of my silence. At first, I thought she regretted what she said, that maybe it was one of those moments people have when emotions run too high. But the way she moved, the way she spoke after that night, it wasn't regret. It was control. I started noticing little things changing. She gave me space, more than usual. She stopped texting me constantly, stopped demanding to know where I was every second. It should have felt like a relief, but it didn't. It felt like the quiet before something worse. One evening, I came home to find her sitting in the living room with a wine glass in her hand and a stack of envelopes on the table. She smiled as I walked in, a smile too calm, too knowing. "Just wanted to show you what your life could look like without me," she said, patting the stack of papers like it was a pile of dreams. I sat down, unsure of what she meant, and started looking through them. Property listings, travel itineraries, business proposals with my name at the top. Even an offer letter from a job I hadn't applied for. She said she pulled a few strings. Every document laid out a life of comfort, distance, and total freedom. Every option came with a price tag. And at the top of the pile was the check again. Same amount, same signature. "This could all be yours," she said softly, leaning in. "All you have to do is leave. No drama, no fights. Just disappear." I stared at her, my heart caught between panic and disbelief. There was something terrifying in how calm she was, like she had spent weeks planning this moment. I asked her what she wanted from me. Her smile faded a little. "I want you to choose," she said. "Stay because you love me, or go because you don't. But don't stay and make me feel like a fool." I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up her hand. "Don't lie. I know when you're lying." She stood up, kissed my cheek, and walked away, leaving me there with a future I didn't ask for and a decision I wasn't ready to make. The next few days were unbearable. She was kind, almost painfully so. She made breakfast every morning, told me she loved me without bitterness in her voice. But everything felt like a performance, like she was playing a role and waiting to see if I would forget the script. Every moment with her became a test I didn't study for. I felt like a prisoner in a house filled with luxury. I tried to imagine taking the deal. $12 million. A new life. A second chance. But every time I thought about walking away, my mind flashed to her face. Not the smiling, sweet one she showed the world, but the one that stared into me with quiet fury when she felt control slipping. I didn't know what she was capable of if I said yes. But I knew exactly what she could do if I stayed. And still, I stayed. I told myself it was to buy time. To figure out a plan. To not make a decision in fear. But deep down, I knew it was because I was afraid of what I would find if I left. Afraid that the peace she promised wasn't real. That even if I walked away with money in my hand, I'd still be looking over my shoulder. Because you don't just leave someone like her. Not without consequence. Not without something breaking. I could feel the walls of my life shifting, closing in. The air in our home was always too still. Her smile was always too wide. And somewhere behind those eyes, I knew she was waiting for the moment I made the wrong move. Waiting to show me why she believed I never truly could leave. The days blurred into one another after that. Everything seemed calm on the surface, but I could feel the tension living in the silence between us. Lana had stopped asking questions, stopped making demands, and for a moment I convinced myself that maybe she had let go. Maybe the offer was her way of giving me a choice, and now she was stepping back. But that illusion didn't last. It started with the locks. One evening I came home and found the key I always used no longer worked. I stood outside for almost 10 minutes before Lana opened the door. She acted surprised, said it must be a mistake, that maybe the locksmith had changed them while fixing the front door. I didn't ask why she hadn't told me. I didn't want to hear another lie delivered with a smile. I told myself it was probably nothing. But I kept my keys close after that. Kept my phone charged, just in case. Then came the cameras, hidden ones. I found the first behind a book on the living room shelf. A tiny black lens, barely visible, pointing straight at the couch where I spent most of my time. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. I just wanted to feel closer to you while I was out, she said calmly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. You're always so distant lately. I needed to understand why. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I was too tired. Instead, I just nodded, and she wrapped her arms around me, whispering that she missed how we used to be. That she wished I'd stop making her feel like a stranger in her own home. I stood there frozen, unsure how much more of myself I could lose before I vanished completely. The final straw that day was the message on my mirror. Written in red lipstick, "You're not going anywhere." I stared at it for a long time. My mind searched for some reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe she was being playful. But the way the letters curved, slow and deliberate, didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a warning. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I told her I wasn't feeling well and laid down on the couch. She didn't argue. She just stood in the hallway watching me, long after the lights were off. I could feel her there, quiet and still, like a shadow refusing to leave. I kept my eyes shut, heart pounding, every muscle tense in case I had to run. The next morning, she made pancakes. Told me she loved me. Acted like everything was normal. I sat across from her, chewing slowly, my stomach a knot. She looked so at peace, humming to herself, sipping coffee, as if nothing had happened. As if the cameras, the locks, the message on the mirror, were all part of some forgotten dream. I started to notice how she always knew what I was doing. If I opened a drawer, she'd comment on what I was looking for. If I picked up my phone, she'd mention the name of the person I was texting before I said a word. She had access to everything, my messages, my call logs, even my bank account. There was no privacy, No place to hide, not even in my own head. One night, I tried to pack a bag. Quietly, after she'd gone to bed. I crept into the hallway with my shoes in hand, my chest tight, hands shaking. But before I reached the door, she was standing there. Just standing, in the dark. No words, no anger, just watching. I dropped the bag. She walked past me, took the bag, and unpacked it silently. Then she turned to me and said, "You're not ready yet. But that's okay, I can wait." And she smiled. It was the kind of smile that said she wasn't afraid of me leaving, because she was sure I never would. Or maybe because she had already decided I couldn't. That night, everything inside me changed. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember who I was before her. Before the rules, before the fear, before the love that turned into a slow, suffocating trap. I tried to count the red flags, to line them up in my mind like clues in a mystery I already knew the ending to. But it wasn't just the big things, the threats, the money, the cameras. It was the way she rewrote my reality day by day until I no longer trusted my own voice. In the morning, she made breakfast again. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit, everything arranged perfectly on the plate. I didn't want it. I didn't want her smile. I didn't want to pretend anymore. But I sat down because I was too tired to fight. She watched me eat, asking if I slept okay. I lied and nodded. She reached across the table, brushed something off my cheek with her thumb, and said she was proud of me. Proud that I was finally settling down, finally understanding her love. I spent most of that day trying not to be seen. I moved through the house quietly, avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversation. I kept my phone in my pocket, turned off notifications, deleted anything that looked suspicious. I felt like a spy in my own home, not knowing what she could see, what she already knew. It wasn't just about the cameras anymore. It was the feeling that she was always 2 steps ahead. That she had mapped every corner of my fear, and now she was walking through it like she owned it. She left in the afternoon to go to the store, and for the first time in days, I was alone. I rushed to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. My eyes looked hollow, like something had been slowly draining out of me. I whispered to myself, "You have to leave. You have to," but I didn't know how. She had access to everything. She knew everyone I used to talk to. She had built a world where I only existed in relation to her. I thought about calling someone, anyone, but what would I say? That I was being watched. That she offered me millions to go away, but I was too scared to take it. That evening, she returned with groceries and a new perfume she wanted me to try. She said it reminded her of the night we first met. She sprayed it on my neck without asking, inhaled deeply, and said, "Perfect. Just like I remember." We ate dinner in silence. I watched her hands, the way she used her fork, the way she refilled my glass before I could ask. Every detail felt deliberate, like she was playing a role in a script only she had written. When I stood to clear the table, she grabbed my hand, pulled me close, and whispered, "Tonight, I want to remind you why you can't leave." Her voice was gentle, but it chilled me. She lit candles, put on music, opened a bottle of wine. She was kind, too kind, like she was trying to erase every piece of fear with tenderness. Like if she gave me enough comfort, I'd forget how trapped I was. She told me stories about the future she saw for us. Trips we'd take, homes we'd buy, kids we might raise. She painted it so vividly I almost believed it. But underneath every word, I heard something else. A warning, a quiet threat that if I ever tried to leave again, she'd make sure I had nowhere to go. No one to believe me. No one to run to. When we went to bed, she held me tightly. Too tightly. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I lay there counting every breath, wondering how many nights I could survive like this. Wondering if the money was ever real, or just another chain she wrapped around my choices. Because love doesn't feel like this. Love doesn't trap you. Love doesn't follow you into your silence and make a home there. I woke up before her, which almost never happened. For a few seconds, I just watched her breathe, her arm draped over me like a claim. Her face was peaceful, like she hadn't spent months chipping away at my sense of self. I slipped out of bed slowly, careful not to wake her, and went straight to the bathroom. I locked the door and sat on the floor, knees to my chest, heart racing. My mind was loud, running in every direction, but one thought kept pushing its way through the noise: I couldn't do this anymore. I remembered the person I used to be. Independent, outgoing, full of ideas, full of plans. I remembered laughing without guilt, speaking without fear of it being twisted. Now I watched my own words before they even left my mouth. I studied her moods like weather patterns, always bracing for the storm. And I kept telling myself I was staying for love. But what kind of love needs a lock on every exit? I looked down at my phone. No missed calls, no texts, no one checking in. She had made sure of that. Slowly, piece by piece, she had replaced my support system with herself. And now, I was alone in a house full of everything except freedom. Later that morning, she woke up and found me in the kitchen. I had made coffee, something she always did, and for a moment she looked almost unsettled. Like the balance had shifted. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I slept well. I smiled and said yes. I was learning how to hide my truth in plain sight. We sat together for breakfast, but I couldn't eat. She noticed. Her tone turned sharp. "You're pulling away again," she said, her eyes narrowing. "I can feel it." I told her I was just tired. She didn't believe me. She stared at me in silence, long enough to make me sweat. Then, just as suddenly, she softened. Reached across the table, took my hand. "You promised you'd never leave," she said gently. "You told me I was your home." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I realized something. I had stopped promising anything. I was living in a lie, surviving by pretending. And she knew it. She knew I was slipping through the cracks of her control, and it scared her. But she wasn't going to beg. She was going to trap me again, the only way she knew how. That afternoon, I went to the backyard to sit under the tree. She rarely joined me there. It was one of the few spaces that still felt like mine. I sat there for hours, thinking about the night she offered the money. How confident she had looked. How certain she was that I wouldn't take it. Not because I didn't want to, but because she believed I couldn't. That's when it hit me. She was right. Not because I was weak, but because she had designed it that way. Every door I once had was closed. Every friend was pushed away. Every secret I held, she had found a way to uncover. And the few pieces of myself I had left, I'd buried so deep I wasn't sure I could even find them anymore. That night, she wanted to cook together. She was cheerful, humming to herself, dancing around the kitchen like we were a normal couple planning a date night. I played along. I chopped vegetables. I nodded. I smiled when I had to. But my mind was somewhere else, counting the days, the minutes, the moments I had left to figure out how to escape. After dinner, she pulled me close and whispered, "You don't have to be afraid. You'll see soon enough, you were always meant to stay." Her words wrapped around me like chains. But for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her and nodded. Because now, I wasn't waiting for her to let me go. I was planning how to free myself. She always thought she knew me better than I knew myself. That no matter how far I tried to pull away, she could reel me back in with a few soft words and a kiss on the forehead. But she didn't know what I'd been thinking in those quiet moments, in the dark corners of the house where the cameras didn't reach. She didn't know that every smile I gave her was practiced. Every "I love you" was a thread I used to keep her from seeing how far I'd really gone. I started small, taking mental notes. What time she left the house. Where she kept the documents. How often she checked my phone. I found a notebook from my old life, tucked away in a drawer she hadn't touched, and began writing again, just little things at first. Fragments of truth. Plans I could carry out in silence. I couldn't trust technology. I couldn't make a call or send a message without her knowing. But pen and paper, she never saw that coming. It took days, careful steps, quiet testing. I memorized the camera angles, knew where to walk to stay out of sight. I learned her routines better than she knew her own. When she'd be in the shower. When she'd fall asleep too deeply to notice the sound of a zipper or the creak of a floorboard. I moved money from our joint account into a prepaid card I found buried in her desk. A card she probably forgot existed. Everything I did had to look like nothing. Then one night, she told me she had a surprise. A weekend away, just the two of us. Somewhere remote. No phones, no internet. Just nature and, as time. My blood ran cold. I smiled, nodded, said I couldn't wait. But I knew what it meant. She could feel me slipping, and now she wanted to isolate me even more. Remove every last piece of escape until I forgot escape was even possible. That night, while she packed for the trip, I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror again. But this time, I didn't see someone broken. I saw someone done. Done being afraid. Done waiting. Done pretending. I repeated it in my mind like a prayer. Tonight. You leave tonight. She fell asleep early. Her back turned to me, one hand stretched toward where I should have been. I waited for her breathing to slow, for her body to go still. I didn't move quickly. I moved with purpose. Shoes in one hand, jacket in the other, my heart beat louder than my footsteps. As I reached the front door, I felt it, the weight of everything behind me. The guilt, the fear, the sick, twisted part of me that still wanted to believe she loved me, that I could have fixed her, saved her. But I couldn't save someone who didn't want saving. I could only save myself. I stepped out into the cold night air, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed. Really breathed. Deep, full, and without fear. I didn't run. I walked. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because if I did, I might have hesitated. I used the card to get to a motel 2 towns over. I paid in cash, no names, no questions. I slept for the first time in days, not deeply, but freely. When I woke up, I had messages from her. Missed calls. Where are you? Come home, please. I forgive you. But I didn't respond. I changed my number. I reached out to one of the few friends I hadn't completely lost, someone who had been waiting in silence for me to find my way back. I told them everything. They didn't ask why I stayed. They just said, I'm glad you're out. It took time to feel normal again. Even now, sometimes I flinch when the phone rings or hear footsteps behind me. But I'm learning. Healing isn't loud or fast. It's quiet, steady, a whisper that grows into a voice again. And that check, I left it on the kitchen table the night I walked out. She offered me millions to disappear. But I left to finally exist. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to this story. It wasn't easy to tell, but it was important. Because sometimes, the most dangerous places aren't violent or loud, they're quiet. Polished, hidden behind, I love yous, and perfectly cooked dinners. And sometimes the people who say they'd give you everything, are the ones who slowly take everything away. This isn't just about one relationship. It's about the kind of control that wears the mask of love. The kind that traps you by making you feel guilty for wanting freedom. And if you're watching this and something about it feels familiar, please know, you're not weak for staying, and you're not selfish for wanting more. You're allowed to choose yourself. Even if it means walking away from someone who says they can't live without you. Love should never come with fear. It took me a long time to understand that leaving didn't make me a traitor. It made me brave. I didn't take the money. I took my life back. And in the end, that was worth more than anything she could have written on a check. If this story resonated with you, or reminded you of someone you care about, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. You never know who might read your words and feel a little less alone. And if you're new here and want to hear more real stories that matter, make sure to subscribe. We've got more coming, stories of truth, healing, and survival. Thanks for being here. You are never alone.